It is 9 days to the much talked about swearing in of Raila Odinga as the People's President by the National Super Alliance and Kalonzo Musyoka as his deputy. The People's Assembly of NASA have been going around trying to collect the views of Kenyans. They were in Machakos on Friday. They are set to be in Mombasa today. Let's listen in to what Raila Odinga had to say in Machakos.
Tutaonyesha kwamba sisi tulishinda. Ndio sababu tunasema tunaenda na ile matokeo ya tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8. Hii ndio uchaguzi. Ile ya tarehe 26 mwezi wa 10 ilikuwa na Uhuru na Kenyatta walikuwa wanashindana. Uhuru alikuwa anashindana na baba yake. Sio? Akashinda baba yake, sivyo? Kumekuwa na porojo ya kujaribu kutenganisha Kalonzo, Raila, Musalia na Wetangula. Naambia ngoo. Kwa hivyo mimi naambia nyinyi tarehe 30 mwezi wa Januari Raila na Kalonzo watakuwa pale Uhuru Park.
A lot was said in Machakos, and one of the messages that seemed to be getting out of that place was the fact that time for dialogue has lapsed.
Kwa hivyo mimi naambia nyinyi tarehe 30 mwezi wa Januari Raila na Kalonzo watakuwa pale Uhuru Park. Mimi Raila Amolo Odinga na hapa kwamba mko tayari? Mko tayari?
I was born here, I've grown here. And today, ndugu Raila, I want to caution you. You will go nowhere. You will never go in exile. Hapa ni nchi yetu. Ama mnasemaje? Hakuna nchi safi kama Kenya. Therefore, kama the late Mzee Ole Ntimama one time alisema tutakanyagania hapa. Kana mwazi hata mbaitu? Wangapa anasema tutakanyagania hapa mpaka Kiomana.
Hakuna mtu ambao anaweza kusema ya kwamba ni Raila Amolo Odinga ama Kalonzo Musyoka ni amekataa dialogue. Sisi kama wananchi ndio tumekataa nini? Dialogue. Na kama ni mambo ya kuapishwa, ni sisi wananchi ndio tunasema ya kwamba Raila Amolo Odinga na Kalonzo Musyoka lazima aapishwe.
Hakuna dialogue na tunasema kuapishwa tukiwa tunasema kwa sauti. Hiyo inamaanisha wakamba wamekuja level ingi. Kwa sababu hiyo mambo yote wanakataa wakinyamaza mpaka wewe unajionea mwenyewe. Kwa hivyo mambo yameharibika.
Some of the utterances from the NASA leadership in Machakos on Friday. Mutinda, some of the things that Kalonzo is saying there, very interesting, saying, alluding to what Raila Odinga had said, or alleged to have said, that if need be, this will happen from outside the country. Kalonzo saying, no, we're not going anywhere. This will happen here, saying tutakanyagania hapa. Very controversial statement there, if you ask me. What is your take on this twist?
Tutakanyagania hapa mpaka Kiumane. That should be underlined. Mpaka Kiumane. You know, the thing I've always, you know, my position has always been that they are looking for a disruptive agenda. And I think they are now coming out more clearly about it. It is about mpaka Kiumane. And in whose interest is that going to be? Because at one instance, Kalonzo is saying that he wants to meet the president. The other instance is saying that they don't recognize the president and they are going out to swear themselves in. Now, what is it exactly that they are looking for? Because I had earlier alluded to the fact that if it was just about electoral justice, then there are very many other ways of doing it without having to hold the country at ransom. But clearly, they want to make
maybe this
the country...
is the most effective if you ask them.
Making the country ungovernable. Clearly, making the country ungovernable so that people are forced to sit on the table. And that can only be of interest to them and not the common mwananchi. 2017 has not been a very good year for most of the Kenyans, and Kenyans were hoping that 2018 is going to be different and people are going to get an opportunity to go back to their different, ways of livelihood. And from what the leaders are saying there, it's like they are adamant to make sure that that does not happen beyond 30th. And then you're left to wondering then, what next? Because, for instance, if they are led by the government to do their swearing in, and the event is over on the 30th of January, what next? Other than polarizing the country, because from where I sit, I think it is just about polarizing the country. It is about sending a message to NASA strongholds that people should not go back to business as usual, that this country should remain polarized, and that antagonistic approach should go on until whatever issues they are raising are addressed by the government. Then is that in the interest of all of us, or is it just in the interest of the few people? Because this is what they are looking for. At the end of the day, if it was just about electoral justice, I believe they would have looked for very many ways of approaching it.
Right.
But from what they are saying and from the statements and the hardening of positions, there is more to it than just electoral justice. And we are going to see going forward.
Husband, that headline position that Mutinda is talking about didn't only come from the leaders in Machakos. The crowds were chanting, no dialogue. What do you think about these twists?
Yeah, it's very interesting. And basically the headline position tells you a lot about what the NASA leadership has as far as looking for electoral justice is concerned. You cannot just take that kind of a headline position unless you have information that anchors the headline position that you're taking. And that information could be drawn from the will of the people, that people are pushing the leadership to a point where the leadership has no other choice but to take such a headline position. Or secondly, it could be from other powers. The problem in this country that we have is that sometimes we don't get to know the truth. And even the system that are supposed to provide us with the truth don't give us that information. So when you have NASA leadership talk like that, and then in the last few days we've had a lot of pressure from EU, the release of the Observer report by EU, and then a few EU MPs make a lot of noise. The US ambassador saying that they have a budget to facilitate negotiation. Then you start asking yourself critical questions. Do these guys talk from a point of knowledge that probably we don't understand? And that is what I see from their headline position, that there is something that they are critically anchored on to warrant the taking of that kind of hardline position. But if I may also say something else, I don't think Kenyans are divided. We are not divided at all. I am a teacher, I go to class and I see how my students don't care where I come from so long as I deliver content. I go to the supermarket, I go everywhere. But electoral justice divides Kenyans. We must be alive to that. And whether NASA is pushing this because they're interested in power or not, there are things that Kenyans are clear about. I don't think Kenyans are interested in a power-sharing deal. I don't think Kenyans are interested in who will be the president. Kenyans are interested in a dialogue that will force a situation where in the subsequent elections that we are going to have, the will of the people will matter. And I think when they explain electoral justice, we need to situate it broadly. In a democracy, the political party that wins power forms the government. They don't form the government forever. They form the government for a period of time. In Kenya, it is 5 years. Now, the other that loses the election and has majority becomes part of the opposition, minority. An electoral justice will ensure that whether you're in government or in opposition, in the coming election, you have a chance to form that government, either as the incumbent or as a new government. And that brings power back to the people in the way they evaluate who they give power. When there is that justice, it means that the people will have the power. Therefore, this party that will be in opposition will work out of its way, do research, find ways and means to oversight this government, to present to the people a way that would endear them to the people to elect them in the next election.
Right.
And the government in power will have to deliver, because the only way to get to retain power is to be elected by the people. And if you deliver, you won't have to rig an election. If there is an electoral justice in the system, then it means that the only way to get that power is to do the right thing, because you cannot interfere with the system.
All right. Mark Hesbon says all this is so that the country can achieve electoral justice.
If you want to crucify Jesus, remove the decision from Pilate and give it to the crowd. You see, what we need to understand is that IQ is not cumulative, neither is it additive. Meaning that the more people in a group, the more foolish a decision they make. If today the leadership of NASA is going to follow the chants of a crowd, in 3 days we will crucify Jesus. Okay? And that's the problem. You cannot call yourself a leader of a crowd and then be led by the same crowd. It's the height of madness. That being said, and I keep coming back to the very same point, is Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka incapable of bringing about the electoral justice they claim to be seeking without bringing the country to a space of kukanyagana? Listen, if I know my movement will cause a fight between us as a panel, and I continue to do it, then whatever reason I'm doing it is superseded by the violence that I want to see. And that's the reality of this course of action. Because today, does Raila have 1,000 supporters who are willing to walk with him on the streets of Nairobi to demonstrate? Yes, he does. He has them in the millions. Why is he choosing the route of treason? Why is he choosing the route of kukanyagana? Why is he choosing the route of kamambaya nimbaya? That must only mean that what you want is the end result, not of an ungovernable Kenya, but a country that is at loggerheads with each other, where our feet are against each other's heads. That is where this is headed. Right. And we must pause and realize that before we crucify this Jesus called Kenya, we must decide and realize there are better ways to electoral reform than killing each other because we want to swear ourselves in. Let's be reasonable.
All right. Dismas, do you agree?
Mark has spoken with a lot of energy. Sorry?
Are you en route to Golgotha?
I don't know where that is. But let's look at the NASA philosophy. As far as the NASA is concerned, there were no elections on the 26th. So they've not accepted, and they're not moving on. They're demanding electoral justice. The NASA philosophy says that Raila Odinga is going to become the people's president. Nobody from NASA has said Raila Odinga is going to become the president of the Republic of Kenya. So it's very clear that NASA has got some clever chaps.
So there's nothing...
There's nothing treasonable about it, yeah. I mean, if you go through the newspapers today, Kenya has got so many presidents. The Law Society of Kenya is looking for a president. There's a president of a farmers' union. The football association in Kenya has got a president. There are so many presidents. But there's nobody who has said is the president of the Republic of Kenya. Raila Odinga has not said he's going to be sworn in as the president of the Republic of Kenya and is going to be given the instruments of power. So people should stop being nervous. What they're essentially saying that he's got the People's Assembly, and the People's Assembly is the de facto leader. Even if he doesn't swear himself in or inaugurate himself, he's actually the de facto leader of that People's Assembly. So I don't know why people should be nervous about that. But again, you know, that's a ceremonial process. The main things we're supposed to ask ourselves, why is Raila Odinga wanting to be sworn in? And maybe we go to a gentleman called Donald Rumsfeld, who used to be the defense secretary in the US at some stage. He spoke about 4 things: the known knowns, the known unknown, and the unknown unknown, and the unknown knowns. And I suspect that I've been able to confuse you so that I can go on with the process. Now, for the NASA guys, or rather for the Jubilee guys, they're very nervous because it's going to be unknown unknown. They do not know what is going to happen if Raila Odinga gets sworn in as the people's president. If he leaves his home in Karen, then he goes to Uhuru Park, wherever it's going to be, and he's sworn in as the people's president, Jubilee is very nervous because it's unknown unknown. They don't know what is going to happen. Is it going to lead to a revolution? Will he go back home? Will he pitch tents at Uhuru Park? Is Kenya? I mean, so that is what is disturbing. Another disturbing thing is unknown known. Everybody in Kenya knows that Raila has been complaining about the elections that they were stolen. But 50% of the nation says, let's sweep it under the carpet so that we celebrate a new beginning. That is not going to help us. We're not going to bury our heads in the sand. Right. We must accept that Raila Odinga has got a following in Kenya.
Right.
And part of, largely, the following is irrational. His word is law. Believe you me, If Raila today decides that he's going to celebrate a new beginning and he wants dialogue, all his followers will say, Baba amesema. Now, for us to make progress, President Kenyatta must realize that if he accepts to go for dialogue, he may not be losing anything. Early on, we gave the example of retired President Kibaki. He accepted to negotiate with Raila Odinga. He did not lose anything. For those people who understand what war is all about, Raila was just a ceremonial prime minister. He didn't have control over security, defense, or even treasury. So President Kenyatta must realize that his action today is so important. The European Union is having a conversation around this.
All right.
The United Nations is having a conversation around this. So there must be something. And in my view, they need to go to the table and say, I, as a President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, the only legacy I'm going to leave Kenyans with outside the Big Four agenda is a clean electoral system. That when I leave office, when people are going to compete, it's going to be a level playing field. Or maybe at some stage, the NASA guys then will come and say, wait a minute, can we have a new timetable for election? We need to be having continuous conversations and dialogue. Because for the NASA guys, in as much as Professor Owileye indicates that the nation is not divided, people are divided. It's only that they're leaking their woods in silence or in the cover of darkness.
All right.
If you go to the street, you speak to people, there are two different categories. And the earlier that we realize that you cannot keep a wound with just a bandage, the better for us.
Ben. As you just hold that thought, and let's take a look at the political temperatures or the political battle that this whole process is currently eliciting. Let's listen to Jubilee leaders who have been warning the NASA leadership that they will not allow this to happen.
We all want peace. We want these gentlemen to sit and talk. And then there will be an answer. We can't all be presidents in this country.
Si tumesema, let him be sworn in. Tuone when he's sworn in, ataenda wapi. At least when Uhuru was sworn in, he went to State House, isn't it? And the State House is occupied. So let Raila be sworn in. Then after swearing in, usiku utakuja. Where is he going? So I don't see why there is so much heat and dust, about this issue.
Katiba imeeleza vile mtu anaweza kuwa rais wa nchi. Na inasema nani atamtangaza. Na wakati atatangazwa, katiba inaeleza ataapishwa na nani, saa ngapi, wapi, siku gani, na mambo mengi yameandikwa katika katiba na sheria. Kwa hivyo wewe usituharibie nchi kwa kufanya sarakasi na michezo ambayo iwezi kufanywa hata na watoto wadogo ambao hawajakomaa. Na wewe ni mzee uliokomaa.
Mark, do you think Jubilee are misunderstanding or are lost on the whole idea that NASA is trying to achieve?
I think for Jubilee, they need to get to the point where they realize that the best way to treat Raila is the way you treat a troll in fables. The more they ignore the swearing in, the more they ignore Raila, the stronger they become. The more attention is given to Raila, the more talk is given about Raila, the stronger Raila becomes. And that's the reality. In fact, the whole point of having this swearing in is not so much how the supporters of Raila will react, because we all know they're already his supporters. It is really how Jubilee reacts that comes into question. Now, what should inform how Jubilee reacts? Safaricom was on the resist list. Safaricom is still doing okay. Brookside was on the resist list. It is still doing okay. There are many things that should have fallen apart.
Do you have the latest
financial reports?
Books?
Well, you can tell from how the economy is doing, and Barclays did give an indication of how the economy is doing. Listen, if you sabotage Safaricom, the GDP will suffer in a huge sense, okay? So you have these facts that tell you that a lot of what NASA has prophesied for the last 8 or so months has not come to pass. There was no 10 million strong. There was no outright win in August 8th. There was no win in October 26th. There was an election in October 26th. There was no election, as they promised, 2 months after October 26th. Listen, the reality of the matter is whoever has the prophetic charms for NASA is totally misadvising them, starting from the pullout of Raila Odinga from the past election. NASA is making mistakes. Okay? And as a political analyst, I cannot sit here and lie to the nation that the antics that NASA is doing will work. But if Jubilee continues to give NASA attention, continues to focus on NASA, then what is a non-issue will become an issue. The best way for Jubilee to handle this is to ignore the throne.
All right. Husband, what do you think about Jubilee's countering everything that NASA is trying to do on this swearing-in issue?
One thing I must say is that I respect Governor Kiraitu Murungi. I've followed his politics since when I was young. And I think ideologically they are carved from the same cloth with Raila Amolo Odinga. And for him to imagine that Raila Amolo Odinga swearing himself in is tantamount to going to a house somewhere in the hill is probably to miss the point. And I think this has articulated it very well, that no one is interested in, I don't think NASA folks are interested in going to State House. They're not interested in becoming the president of this country. They don't even give a lot of attention to who the president is. I think their focus is on the things that they've already articulated and they keep articulating, and they want to gain momentum, you know, to have themselves get a clout among the common mwananchi, because the Constitution is very clear that sovereignty belongs to the people of Kenya. At no point did they say that these people can exercise it by paying allegiance to the person who resides at State House. So I think Jubilee is treating some of critical issues, you know, that we need to attend to in a very condescending way. And it is unfortunate that the people articulating such issues in a condescending way are people that we respect, or people who are in a very high position, like the Senate Deputy Speaker. So from where I see it, this narrative is being taken to a totally very flippant direction by people who should take it seriously from the Jubilee end. And that warrants the hard stance that NASA is giving, that right. We need to have a serious conversation about things. It is not a conversation about who is in State House. And talking about the person who is in State House is like revisiting something that we already did. President Uhuru Kenyatta was sworn in, he's the president.
Utinda, how would you describe Jubilee's reactions?
You know, first and foremost is that NASA did a blunder. And their biggest blunder was the boycott of the 26th election. And what NASA has been trying to do is to find ways of getting out of that blunder without necessarily admitting that it was a blunder. Now, they are trying to pull Jubilee into that. And I want to agree with Mark that the more Jubilee pays attention to that, the more we are actually strengthening the whole thing. I think Kiraitu Murungi's probably approach would be the best, so that at the end of the day, they go to the end with their blunder, and they are now left with, okay, what next? And that can only happen if they are not engaged. But if Jubilee makes it its business to pursue every other thing that they are doing, including probably disrupting, because if you ask me, I have a feeling that NASA is actually praying very hard that Jubilee disrupts their 30th event, because that is the only way that they will keep on, and they will be in a position to convince their people that there's something they're pursuing, only that the government is stopping that particular thing. But if, for instance, the government let them do it, then the question would be, what next? Like Kiraitu is trying to pose. And probably from that point, people would be forced by circumstances to sober up and approach the issues that are there in the right way. Because nobody is saying that there are no issues to be discussed. But the question is that the right approach? Is the approach that we can probably even have an alternative government? Because that's what they are trying to convince their people, that we can have two governments in Kenya. That one that is led by the president, and another one that is led by the people's president, to paraphrase what Dismas said. Right. But we know very well that that is not possible. So the question is, the NASA has been having a challenge of convincing its people that they knew exactly what they were doing. And that's why Mark has very ably explained that there are steps that they took, including the boycott, including a promise that we're going to go back to the elections in 2 months or thereabout, and all those things have not happened and are clearly not going to happen. So they have a challenge of convincing their people that they had a game plan that was to lead them somewhere. Clearly, they did not have that. And getting out of it is becoming an issue. Now, the problem is they are pulling all of us into it, and they are holding the country at ransom. It's important that this is dealt with in a manner that takes them to the point where, what next? So that now we can have a very honest discussion about the way forward and about the issues that they are bringing to do with electoral justice, which are important issues to be addressed, but not the way they are trying to.
It is the biggest political story in the country right now. National Super Alliance will be holding their People's Assembly in Mombasa today. They were in Machakos on Friday, and the message that seems to be getting out of that is that the time for dialogue is past, so it will be interesting to see what happens in Mombasa today. We are following that up. Our team in Mombasa will be giving us the very latest when and as it happens. Let's take a quick commercial break here on the broadcast. When we return, we take a look at matters Parliament a bit. We will look at the Kitui West parliamentary by-election that is slated for the 24th of March this year. There have been happening the developments there. The Wiper candidate was given her ticket by the Wiper Party. Jubilee have withdrawn their candidate. They have said they will support Edith Nyanze, the widow of the late Francis Nyanze. We'll take a look at that, and of course what's happening in Jubilee. There was a parliamentary group meeting at State House Nairobi where members were asked to vote out those chairmen of various departmental committees who went against the party position earlier. We'll take a look at all that when we return from this quick commercial break. I'm going to go.
Yes, I found my office closed. Which office? This is my office. This is the office. Whose office? I'm the CC in charge of water and irrigation. Agreed. Which office are you talking about? Agreed. And the MD of Muranga Water. And you are on leave. I gave you a leave. I'm the CEO water and irrigation engineer. I was. Let us not play cat and mouse games. I'm employed. Which office are you talking about? This is a public facility. Agreed. And what are you doing there? I'm a public servant. And you are on leave. Public servant who is on leave. I'm supposed to be given. By who? By you are supposed to report to me. Board of Muranga Water. I'm the CC in charge of water and irrigation. You have owned this enterprise with Munga. Therefore, no. You have owned Fort Aqua personally as Nanga. This is the owner of Fort Aqua. No. This is the owner of Wasco. I think a public enterprise. I think what you should do.